Okay,
to be clear,
that is very
the
dishonest.
people who,
What you just did.
no, that is not very dishonest.
Yes, you are.
People
yes,
who
you are.
put
You
up
know you're being
statues of
dishonest.
Stepan Bandera,
You're being very dishonest right now.
People who put up Shushkevich on
They put up this
postcards.
statue. Kill their children. Come on, shut the fuck
Why
up
would
for a
they
second.
put-
You're being so
bro,
dishonest. You're being
why-
so dishonest.
What if
dishonest.
Germany put up
You're
a
dishonest.
statue to
I
Goebbels?
don't care.
You like the
I
World War II
don't
comparison?
care. Yeah, I can hear you.
Hey, do you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
All right.
How is Euromaidan a CIA coup?
All right. First, you gotta ask me this. You gotta answer me this. If you strongly believe that Euromaidan wasn't a CIA coup,
I know it wasn't, but yeah.
okay, explain to me how did Saakashvili, the president of Georgia, who got invaded by Putin in 2008, the governor of Odessa, and hit one of his military advisors is actually the leader of the International Georgian Legion. What's his name? Makashvili? Mushvashvili?
I don't know how to pronounce his name either, but I know who you're talking about, yeah?
Yeah. So explain how a president of Georgia could become the governor of Odessa.
You just did? Like what? What is this in relation?
It's a completely he was part of the Rose Revolution, first of all, in Georgia. Second of all,
you don't have anything again. Every time it's the same brainlets. I'm so sick of you guys.
It's a completely
Why do you waste your time like this? Come on, just give me evidence of a CIA coup. I don't care if the former president of Georgia was the governor of Odessa and is now the leader of the Georgian Legion. That does not prove that the CIA overthrew Yanukovych's government. Give me the evidence right now. I don't care. Would that prove that the CIA elected Trump?
No.
It wouldn't. So give me evidence. Give me more substantial evidence. This has nothing to do with the CIA. Please. The reason I called you in here is mostly to prove a point that you don't have evidence, because I know there's no evidence. So please provide me the evidence, or tell me you don't have evidence and leave.
You're just dismissing it. You're not.
I am dismissing you because you don't have evidence, because this has nothing to do with the CIA.
Explain. Wait, I just explained to you how it does have something to do with the CIA.
Because he was involved in the Rose Revolution, and so you would say that this guy orchestrated the Euromaidan revolution?
No, I didn't say. I didn't say. No, I didn't say he orchestrated the Euromaidan revolution.
Was he involved in Euromaidan in a way where the CIA used him as a ploy in order to funnel guns and money and tools in order to overthrow Yanukovych? Give me evidence of that. If the answer to that is yes.
Odessa was very anti-Maidan. I think they actually voted for like the Communist Party locally a bunch of times before, if you look at election results.
Okay,
and they were very anti-Maidan, and there was nobody else in Ukraine to rein in on them, because there was no, before 2014 there was like 50% of people wanted to go to the EU, but it wasn't like as strong as people like to overplay.
Yanukovych promised that they would sign the association agreement. He lied. He then pulled out.
Well, he didn't lie. Putin presented him a better version. And also,
that is a lie. Wait a second. If I say I'm going to decriminalize marijuana, and then somebody comes to me and says, actually, it'd be better to arrest black people, and I say, never mind, I'm going to arrest all the black people, and I'm not going to legalize marijuana. First of all,
your comparison doesn't make sense.
My comparison is he made a political commitment, then he turned around on it. He lied.
Which is completely common for politicians.
Which is a lie. Yes, politicians lie. He's a corrupt liar. Then people protested against him because he's a corrupt liar.
By the way, do you know who used to be friends with Yanukovych?
This is going to be the next hour. Let me just bring up again, no evidence. No evidence the CIA did anything.
Well, first of all, you're just dismissing my evidence.
Your evidence was nothing. Your evidence was that the former president of Georgia was the governor of Odessa, and Odessa was anti-Euromaidan. So therefore, how does that implicate?
No, I want you to give me an explanation of why a president of another country becomes the governor of a oblast. Is that common? Do you think that's a common thing?
No, it's not common. A lot of things
then explain why. Okay, then explain why that would happen. I gave you my narrative. Give me your counter narrative to that. You're just dismissing what I'm saying rather than explaining it.
You need to prove your narrative, though, that this was something orchestrated by the CIA.
I mean, the Odessa massacre happened in Odessa. Maybe that should
How does
give
that
you
prove? How does that implicate the CIA? None of this implicates the CIA.
Oh my God, well, I haven't we're building up to it.
There's no implicating of the CIA.
Oh my God,
Get to it. You're just trying to paint a narrative that doesn't include the CIA. Include the CIA. Get the CIA into it. Okay?
Oh my God. Is this going to be one of those debate bro moments where you need a direct link? And if you don't have you technically won.
That's
even though these are clandestine operations which involve
I've lost faith in democracy. You've made me lose faith in democracy.
You're just
yes. You need evidence for claims. My answer is yes. You need evidence.
Well, I am presenting you evidence. You're just not. You're not engaging in them.
Okay, let's engage. You know what? I'm gonna give you 5 minutes. Get me to the CIA. Okay. So
I'm not. Well,
President. The thing is, I said you're because I said it was not a CIA coup, and then you're in the chat. You're like, no, I don't. That's nonsense. What about explain this? Explain. Like, okay.
Well, I gave you about the IMF loans.
And I'm like, okay. So IMF loans. So the IMF what with the CIA? How do they work with the CIA to do the coup?
Well, there's a political aspect to the IMF loan. When a country takes out an IMF loan, they're essentially saying they're a vassal of the United States. No country will willingly.
Okay.
Yes, that's literally how it works.
Okay. How do they become a vassal of the United States?
They're of course
off topic. Let's stay with the CIA.
No.
If you need your goal is to get me off topic, is so we forget that we're supposed to justify the CIA did a coup, so we can get into tiny little nuanced details that have nothing to do with the CIA whatsoever. Because you don't have any evidence. Please, for the love of God, give me evidence.
These are interrelated things that we could.
That's it. I'm just going.
That when put together will explain to you how the intelligence services of America do these things.
How can
I'm showing you?
Wait. This is a really important question. How can I trust you on intelligence services when you've shown such a lack of intelligence generally?
Okay, but you still can't explain to me stuff like governor of Odessa being a Georgian president.
You know what? I can't.
IMF.
Let me be clear. I can't explain why the governor of Odessa was the former president of Georgia.
Who participated in a color revolution in Georgia.
We haven't established it's a color revolution.
Well, it's called the Rose Revolution, and it falls within that aspect of what we call color revolutions nowadays. You might not believe that color revolutions are CIA backed. That's fine. This is what we're debating about right now.
I don't like the word color revolution because it removes the autonomy of mostly brown people, and I've seen it used again and again and again and again.
Wait, what are you talking about?
I've seen it every time. I've seen it used for the people of Myanmar.
Oh my God! You're just using these.
Are you gonna shut the fuck up, or you're not gonna shut the fuck? I don't care. I don't care. I'm just gonna
go ahead. Go ahead.
Let me be clear. I have so much disdain for you and for people like you, and that's why I'm very angry at this discussion.
We're
and I just
like 100% right on this.
No, because
there's actually academic evidence for this.
Because there's no academic evidence, and you haven't provided any academic evidence.
I could cite an author right now.
You waste people's time. Okay, cite him. What author proves that it was a CIA coup in Ukraine? What author?
Ivan Kochevansky. Here, I'll paste him in chat. Wow. He actually studied a lot of the right-wing influence within post-Maidan within Ukraine in the post-Maidan regime, and also what happened during Maidan itself.
Wow.
There's a book called Ukraine in the Crossfire.
What book?
There's also called Ukraine in the Crossfire. It proved that although the Maidan protests started organically as an anti-corruption protest, mostly led by middle-class people and college students, it soon became a violent uprising when right-wing provocateurs entered the scene. And if you read Ukraine in the Crossfire, the guy goes into more detail explaining how
does that implicate the CIA?
How the NGOs helped sustain the protest to go on for as long as it did, even though technically it was supposed to be a self-organized, spontaneous protest.
Well, I want NGOs to do their work. I want them to do things.
Well, NGOs, like everything else, is political.
Is your role like every time I open my mouth, you're just gonna talk over me when I'm like?
No, you just you made a statement and I'm responding to it.
Okay, well, respond later. Okay. So none of that had to do with the CIA. None of that implicated.
What do you mean? We didn't get to all of it yet. This was just me explaining some parts of.
The thing is, there is no any of it. That's the problem. Is right now I'm like, okay, show me evidence of the CIA, and you're like, well, the former president of Georgia, he became the governor of Odessa, and he was involved in the thing in Georgia, the Rose Revolution, which
he also got invaded by Russia and lost Ossetia and Abkhazia.
Okay, tell me when I'm allowed to talk.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank
you.
You
miss out some details.
Oh my God! Shut the fuck up, please. So, because he's the governor of Odessa, I'm supposed to take something from that. Like,
no, you're supposed to dig deeper into it and explain that anomaly. That's all I'm saying first.
Okay, wait. Let me.
Do you agree that it's an anomaly for having a foreign head of government become a governor of your?
It's to be clear, it is an anomaly. It's also an anomaly that Joe Biden somehow was able to produce the best midterm results for a Democrat in over 50 years. Or
I don't know how those are related.
I'm about to explain. If you shut your mouth. Please, for the love of God, I'm already upset. Please. The reason why I brought that up is because just because something's an anomaly doesn't mean that something suspect happened. You need to prove that something suspect happened, because there can be intentions and there can be question marks or there can be strange things.
Okay,
that just exist naturally in the wild.
Okay, well, the suspect thing would be if, let's say, Saakashvili was elected by the people of Odessa. It would be an anomaly, but nothing suspect about it, right? Because it was the people electing it, but he was appointed by Poroshenko.
Okay.
Do you know about Poroshenko and how he's like a right-wing?
Petro Poroshenko, or who are you talking about?
Petro Poroshenko. And other than being such a corrupt asshole that he lost to Zelensky, and he was a right-wing nationalist who actually started out, I think, in the same party as Yanukovych. And he's the one that made, I think, Ukrainian Veterans Day, October 14th, which coincides with the date of when the UPA was founded.
Uh-huh.
He's the one that waged war on the Donbas. But he was also buying coal from them at the same time, which is probably one of the reasons he got elected.
Paying the
he also went to jail.
Paying the pensions of everybody in the Donbas, by the way.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
He did.
That's not what some of the studies are saying.
What study? Sure. What do you mean? I
already cited a book and a.
Wait, but I'm not asking about a book. I'm asking about evidence, because I'm saying that the Ukrainian government pays the pensions of people in the Donbas, even though they don't administer the territory because of Russians' invasion.
Wait, how would they pay pensions if they don't administer the region?
You want me to?
Yeah.
Okay, if they're able,
go ahead.
If they are able to reach Ukrainian government officials or Ukrainian government, like civil society, like the civil society, they're able to contact them either by mail or by phone or stuff. They can get their pensions.
But the region was blockaded. They cut off their water. I think right now they're fighting for an area.
You're talking about Crimea. That's a different.
No. I mean, their water is also cut off because part of the Donetsk region.
What does this have to do?
Occupied
what does
by
this have to do with pensions? What does this have to do with pensions?
Well, I'm explaining to you how we're
already fading off. I don't care about any of this.
My God! Because I'm explaining to you how you can't magically declare I'm paying these people pensions without showing me the administrative bureaucracy behind it. And I'm explaining.
Wait. I said they pay them pensions. If they're able to pay them pensions, they do. And you said my study disproves that. It doesn't even make sense. You just dismissed it out of hand. after criticizing me for dismissing stuff out of hand earlier. This is also way off point from what we're supposed to be talking about, which is you justifying the claim that the Euromaidan revolution was a CIA coup. Can we get back to that?
Okay. You want to? Okay. Where were we before we derailed? Oh yeah, I was talking about Petro Poroshenko, and he's the one that appointed the Saakashvili, and what is it, that book that I was mentioning, Ukraine in the Crossfire, mentions is that Petro Poroshenko and I believe it might have been the ambassador to Ukraine from Washington, or directly, or talking to some other foreign officials, that he was in contact with them the whole time, and they were the ones dictating the government policy. And that's another show of how post-Maidan, the Ukrainian government wasn't in control, but it was in control by Washington. Me pointing out the IMF loans is more proof of like how Ukraine became a puppet state.
Okay. How did the CIA orchestrate the Euromaidan?
Oh my God. Are you serious?
You didn't give me any evidence. Okay, what you just did is said
this is such a debate bro thing. I'm showing you proof of that there was meddling by the United States. I'm showing the results of the new government and how this aligns with what happens to other governments that get couped by America.
Okay, so
when Bolivia got couped, okay, can I just finish? Can I give you an example? When Bolivia got couped recently, and that Jennifer Anís or whatever came to power, right away they took out IMF loans too.
Okay.
Countries take out IMF loans all the time as a way to fall in line with America. And what these IMF loans usually entail is liberalizing the economy. And
Okay. People take up IMF loans because they need money.
No, they take.
Shut the fuck up! I'm actually done. Dude. I'm done. You gotta either shut the fuck up or I'm done talking to you.
Oh my God! You're going whitewash IMF loans.
I can't even. What? Watch
you go whitewash IMF loans.
I'm telling you.
Go ahead. Tell me what IMF loans actually do.
You take a loan and then you get money. Then you have to pay the loan back. Sometimes IMF loans are very predatory.
Sometimes they're all the time. All the time. They're specifically designed so that you can't pay them back. And the stipulations for taking out an IMF loan includes cutting your government budget, privatizing state assets, deregulating your labor market, all of that fun neoliberal stuff, as we call it nowadays.
So again, IMF loans are loans countries take out because they need money, and they'll usually take them out when a country is in dire straits. It's kind of usually like a last kind of ditch effort, like what are we gonna do situation.
Yeah. Now that's why America is like.
I am so you are literally retarded, and I cannot make you shut the fuck up.
I just explained to you how.
So I'm just muting you, and you're just gonna be muted until I've decided to unmute you. Okay. So countries take out IMF loans. They can take out IMF loans in order to access investment power, to try to get their country back on the right track. That's the idea. But many times IMF loans come with things like a lack of social services, being like a policy that the IMF is going to try to ask you to do, like cutting back social service, stuff like that. That means a lot of times when the countries take out IMF loans, it gets a lot worse for working people. And that's the problem with IMF loans, is they usually come with stipulations about how you're going to have to run your country to deal with the IMF loans, the recommendations the IMF is going to ask you to do if they're going to trust you with their money so they can make a return on investment for their investors. That is why I think usually if a country's taking out an IMF loan, I mean, you can dig yourself out, but a lot of times you can end up in a worse place. Now, this is not usually done by countries not in the West's alignment. That is true, but this does not make a country into a vassal state of the United States. This is dishonest, and you're kind of reducing what the word vassal state means. Anyway, this is all unrelated to the idea that the CIA did a coup in Ukraine. You're giving a lot of intentions. You're talking about a lot of other organizations that aren't the CIA. But what I'm interested in is the CIA doing the coup. Because from all my conversations with Euromaidan protesters and people who were around at the time and all the research I can do, I can find no ties between the Central Intelligence Agency and the people on the ground doing, like, you know, passing out guns or doing anything to help the revolutionaries carry out a violent overthrow of the government. And so that is what you said you had evidence for, and I want you to provide me the evidence for that.
Okay. First of all, am I still muted?
Now you're not unmuted, yeah.
Okay, so this is a really funny debate, bro. Shit, because you're like, now you got to be very specific. Central Intelligence Agency, even though everyone, even though the code
said you had evidence for.
Everybody who uses the CAA usually means as an umbrella term for United States Intelligence Services. This includes the NSA, the FBI, the CIA,
any
the Pentagon.
Prove that. Okay. Prove that the we know.
NSA I mean, I don't even need to prove this because
prove any of these organizations.
You could Google it, and you'll see Ned saying that we fund civil societies in Ukraine, and we know that Ned is a CIA paper cutout. So there you go.
You're talking about the National Endowment for Democracy.
Yeah, that is literally a CIA cutout. So you can't even. The guy who founded said that we could do CIA stuff in the open now with Ned or some shit like that. So go ahead.
The National Endowment for Democracy gave money to civil groups in Ukraine.
Yes.
And that is why the government was overthrown.
No, that's why you had quote unquote self-organized spontaneous protests, because those NGOs were able to. They weren't.
They 100% were.
I know you learned this in political science. I learned this
I didn't take political science, okay? I didn't take political science. I learned this by going to the country and trying to learn the history very deeply. And the reason I get so loud, I did go to Ukraine. What do you mean?
Wait, if you went to Ukraine and you're still defending it after seeing all those fun tattoos and all those fun flags, I'm sorry. There's just something wrong with you.
I'm sorry, I don't like it when children get shot by Russian soldiers and hospitals get bombed and people get tortured, and visiting a mass grave is something that can really encourage you to not support an invasion of a country.
Those stupid nationalists did it to themselves. If they signed the Minsk Accords, if they disarmed.
Listen to this. Those dumb Ukrainians deserve to be put in the graves.
I didn't say dumb Ukrainians. Yes, you did. I said
those nationalists deserved Bucha. Those nationalists deserved Izium. You sound like you sound like a genocidal maniac when you say things like that, right?
Do you? No, you don't even know what nationalism is, because nationalism is an ideology. It's like 300 years old.
Let's say I brought up the Holocaust, right? And
God, because you can't compare it to anything else, even though
if I brought up the Tatmadaw genocide against the Rohingya, is that niche enough for you, or do we need to go to Western Sahara?
you go and bring up Myanmar or Western Sahara.
I'm bringing up. How about you just? I'm making a comparison. You made a comparison earlier. You understood it when you did it. Can you understand it when I do it?
Okay, go ahead. Make your comparison.
Okay, if I brought up, let's say, the genocide against the Rohingya Muslims, and somebody said, "Well, terrorists deserve it." If I said that, that would be fucking horrific. Because it sounds like I'm trying to justify a genocide against the Rohingya as an anti-terrorism operation. And so if I bring up the mass graves that I saw in Bucha and other locations, and your response is, the nationalists deserve it, it almost sounds like you're excusing atrocities against the Ukrainian people because of nationalism.
No, I assumed I was talking to a normal individual that doesn't just call things genocide willy-nilly like that. Whatever's happening in Ukraine is a mass grave. Okay, that's called a war crime.
Yes, do you think that's bad? You said they deserve it. You said the nationalists deserve it.
I'm talking about the regime that currently controls Kyiv, the nationalists. They brought it on
Zelensky, the Russian-speaking Zelensky brought it upon his own people.
My God, the dude ran on signing the Minsk Accords. He couldn't sign them. There's even a nice videos of him. There's even nice videos of him going to nationalist battalions
at all.
And telling them to throw down the weapons.
There is no excuse for shooting children. There is no excuse for shooting civilians. There are no excuse for filling mass graves. And I think you excusing that behavior as well should have signed the Minsk. You are excusing it. I'm bringing it up, and your response is he should have signed the Minsk Accords if he didn't want those children to be filled into a mass grave, like every other Russia supporter. Every single one of them acts the same behavior because they don't care if Ukrainians get killed. I'm not. You can call it virtue signaling. I don't
because
like
the people you're supporting were doing that for 8 years in Donbas.
They weren't. They absolutely
and I don't even think they were doing as bad.
What mass grave was uncovered in the Donbas?
Oh my God! Obviously, it wasn't a high-intensity war. And by the way, what mass grave?
So they weren't. They're so okay. They weren't.
The regime you support thinks the Volyn massacre was a good thing. So don't pretend to take the moral high ground with these nationalists.
To be clear, to
be clear,
that is very dishonest. What you just did.
No, that is not very dishonest.
Yes, you are.
People
who
put up statues of Stepan Bandera.
You're being very dishonest right now. They put up this statue. Kill their children. Come on, shut the fuck up for a second. You're being so dishonest. You're being so dishonest.
What if Germany put up a statue to Goebbels?
I don't care.
You like the World War II comparison?
Care. That isn't a good comparison.
They're doing Holocaust revisionism
listen to me. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up.
You're doing Holocaust revisionism right now, probably.
What? Really? What Holocaust? What thing did I deny about the Holocaust?
Okay, you're probably going to say, if I bring up the UPA and the OUN, you're going to say that they were fighting against their occupiers and the Soviets were their occupiers. Even though the UPA, the OUN were nothing but a bunch of crazy Greek Catholics living in Poland, deciding that their personal identity is all of Ukrainian identity.
Okay. Are you done?
Even though East Ukrainians never identified themselves as a bunch of crazy Greek Catholics, like done? Bandera, like Shushkevich.
Are you done?
Do you know who Donsov is, by the way?
Are you done? Can you please? Because all of this is secondary to the fact. If I bring
secondary to the fact that history of this country.
For the love of God, please! I'm trying to talk, and you just interrupt it every second. And I'm gonna end the conversation because I actually can't talk to you if you don't shut the fuck up when I'm trying to respond to the things you're saying. So, I bring up a war crime that is happening now, something that is actively happening today.
Sorry, go ahead.
You're actually, are you autistic? I need to know.
Yeah, probably, but that's not the point.
Okay, okay. I'm trying to be patient here, but it's unbelievably frustrating.
You're very passionate about something that you know very little about. Like, do you even know who Donsov is?
Can you please?
He's very important to the history of Ukrainian nationalism.
So I can finish my sentence.
You're comparing mass graves and war crimes to genocide.
Shut the fuck up. I am talking about. Please, for the love of God, shut the fuck up.
This is a war.
Oh my. Okay. I'm gonna go get something to drink. Say whatever the fuck you want. Obviously, you didn't want a conversation.
All right, guys. You guys ready for a history lesson? So if you look up this guy named Donsov, he is the ideological inspiration for the OUN and the UPA or the UPA. He personally translated Mein Kampf to Ukrainian, and he's the one that set up some of the more amoral stuff that the OUN was doing during the second Polish Republic, like terrorist attacks against politicians.
You done?
Oh yeah, I was just giving them a little bit of a history lesson. I was talking about the guy who translated Mein Kampf to Ukrainian.
Okay, so if I bring up a war crime that is currently going on, and I saw And the response I get is the nationalists brought it on themselves. You know, for me,
are you, by the way, I'm sorry, can I just say one thing and then you could go ahead?
No, you can't say anything.
Okay, go ahead then.
Okay. It sounds like a justification. So I got angry because I know people who've lost family members in those graves. And so I reasonably get very angry. But then the response from you when I'm talking about war crimes going on right now is like, what about the Donbas? And I'm like, okay, what war crime, like the mass graves that are being uncovered in Izium, the largest mass grave uncovered in all of Europe since the Yugoslav genocides? And you're like, well, there's nothing like that. There's nothing like that happened, but, you know, the bombing or whatever. And then I'm like, but this is not comparable. This is on a different scale. And then you start bringing up genocides that Ukrainians did against like Polish people and other groups and other groups in history. And you want to know what? I'm not a Stefan Bandera fan. You're not going to hear me saying it's Stefan Bandera.
No, but you'll be
I'm not going to sing. I'm not going to sing that. That word is used much outside of hardcore nationalist rooms. Not. And the word was created before the UPA existed. Anyway,
yeah, I could give you the exact
I'm not done talking, and so you're done talking. And then you bring up genocides from Ukraine's past. After saying the nationalists deserve it, this feels almost like a war of revenge from you. That's what it sounds like. Because if somebody, let's say like we invaded China tomorrow, or no, let's say we invaded Japan tomorrow, and we just like slaughtered like 20 people, we just we fucking chopped off their heads, we threw them in grass graves, and then afterwards the Japanese public was like, oh my god, this is terrible, and we said, what about Nanking? The nationalists deserve it. It sounds like you're justifying a war crime based off of the fact that that country did a war crime, or that country's people did a war crime historically. There is nothing that justifies what Russia did, and the Ukrainian people didn't deserve it or bring it upon themselves in any way. What Russia is doing is inhumane, it is wrong, it is disgusting, and there's no justification for it. Now, if you want to talk about the politics of what created this war, that's one thing, but that's different than trying to justify these war crimes, which is what it felt like you were trying to do, which made me very reasonably angry, because there are a lot of people I know who have been deeply affected by these types of things.
Nope. Can I speak?
Now you can speak.
Yeah, nobody's justifying anything. I'm just my only issue. Okay, first of all, my only issue is that you're using a really heavy word, genocide, to describe this. Yes, you did. You said it multiple times.
We could go back and look at genocide in Myanmar. But that's
no, you were. I'm pretty sure you meant. If I misheard you, okay. If I misheard you, my bad. Then can we continue?
Sure.
Okay. Second of all, don't pretend this is a war. And though, like, other than Bucha, like that Izium grave, those are marked mass graves with like indicators where you could find like mortuary records. I think, if I remember correctly. Third of all, Amnesty and International.
I didn't hear what you said.
Those are marked grave. Those graves in Izium, those are the people that died in the middle of the war. It's not like it's not a mass.
Many of them showed signs of torture. Many of them had bullet wounds that don't come from artillery rounds and bombardment. What was done to those people is a war crime. Not all of them died in torture. Not all of them died in executions, but many of them did. Okay,
fine. And second of all, don't pretend like this is Russia is like a cartoon villain or something. Amnesty International released a report where Ukrainian military is putting their weapons right next to buildings where people live.
Do you think that putting weapons in buildings, putting weapons in storage facilities that are close to civilians?
Yes, that is a war crime. That is a war crime. I mean, Russia evacuated a bunch of people all the time.
It's crazy that you read my mind and you knew the question I was going to ask, even though that was not at all what I was about to ask you.
Okay, go ahead.
And you're full of yourself, and you need to shut your mouth and listen more.
I think you think one side is a good side and one side is evil. None of these people are good people. Like,
I think one side is very clearly better than the other.
No,
I think it's it's not even comparable, and I haven't even responded to what you just said. You didn't even let me finish my original question. Fuck, you got me off my God damn it, you made me forget. You're actually you have a lot of social awareness.
No, probably not.
Okay.
So what I'm saying about the politics of Ukraine is you could support whatever you want. When you're supporting a nationalist cause like what the Ukrainians believe, which is an ethnically pure Ukrainian nation, that's not something you believe. That's what they believe. That's not
true. That's just not true.
How come?
The thing is, Ukraine. What it means to be Ukrainian is different to each Ukrainian you talk to. You want to know who I lived with? You want to know who I lived with in Ukraine most of the time? I lived with a Lebanese family, a Lebanese Ukrainian family from Lebanon who went to Ukraine to flee war. Right now, they had intermingled with the locals, and the grandfather was like an old Soviet scientist. But these people are strong, hardcore supporters of the Ukrainian military. They support Ukraine, not because they're like, we need a genetically pure Ukraine, but because they believe Ukraine deserves to have its border, and they believe in the Euromaidan. They believe in the revolution that got rid of Yanukovych, who was trying to outlaw protesting.
Okay, first of all, just because you talk to one family doesn't
what I'm saying is
this is just anecdotal. I'm basing it off their nationalist ideology. I even heard that chick you interviewed and that chick don't believe in Lona Box interviewed that
you said that they believe in ethnically pure. You said they believe in ethnically pure Ukraine. That's just not true. Because all Ukrainians believe that, and that's not the position of the Zelensky government.
They even think that Russians are a different ethnicity than Ukrainians, which is just not true historically. This is all one cultural group. Like Ukraine and Russia and Belarus, they're like, if you like nationalism is like a new thing.
I mean, there is
cultural.
Let me be clear.
There is. Same
by the way, I agree with that historical interpretation.
In fact,
that there is an ethnic difference between Ukrainians and Russians.
Okay, explain that to me.
Well, one has the national identity of Ukrainians, and the other
nationalism is
Russia. It's a common national and cultural tradition.
No.
Ethnicity. What's your definition of ethnicity?
It's a shared culture and language, and
shared
geographic area too. Okay. Nationalism is something new. It was invented in like the fucking 19th century.
So to be clear,
and Ukrainian nationalism is even newer. That shit is like a product of the 20th century.
That there isn't a different cultural and language tradition in Lviv versus Moscow. There's a massive difference.
Okay. Lviv is a very interesting case because this is where we get into.
I'm sorry. The Ukrainian language is real.
Can I finish?
Ukrainian. I'm sorry.
I'm not saying nothing is real.
You're gonna start talking about Poland, and you're gonna start talking about Hungary, and I understand where we're gonna go with this. But all I need you to understand is the Ukrainian identity is real. It exists. The language exists, and it deserves to have its own representation if they want it, and they seem to do.
Okay. How come? Okay, you know what? I will take it back a step. How come standard Ukrainian is from Galicia? Shouldn't it be from Kyiv? The origins of standard Ukrainian is West Ukrainian. Where I grew up in Ukraine and where a lot of my friends who come from Ukraine grew up, they don't speak anything close to what people speak in Galicia. In fact, some of my coworkers that were from Western Ukraine would better understand Polish than they would understand Russian. So like, can you explain to me why Galician Ukrainian is the standard Ukrainian?
Why it's the standard Ukrainian?
As in, when you speak standard Russian, Muscovy Russian is considered standard Russian. And I'm sure you've heard Russians or people speaking Russian in Ukraine, right?
Of course.
They don't speak anything like people in Russia speak Russian, or like in Moscow. They don't even pronounce the g. They pronounce it as a ch. That's why you get like Lugansk is in Russian, and you get Luhansk in Ukrainian. Or like when they say Geroyam Slava, In Ukrainian, they say Heroyam Slava.
Mm-hmm.
So can you explain the politics behind that?
Why? Once again, why do I need to explain the politics of the
Because
Ukrainian language origin in Galicia,
I mean,
to justify the existence of Ukrainian culture?
I'm not saying you need to justify anything. I'm not saying nothing is fake or real. I'm just saying why is that the dominant one versus other ones?
I don't know why it's Galician.
Well, I could explain to you.
I'm not that interested right now.
Well,
I'm gonna be honest. Languages bore me. All I need to know about language.
I mean, the origins of this conflict is in part to the between the language of Ukrainian and Russian.
But the Ukrainian language was historically banned by the Russian Empire.
Okay, right? First of all, can I give you context to that? During the Russian Empire, only 20% of people were able to read. Of those 20% of people, only a certain amount of them even identified as a Russian nationalist or as any other nationalist. And of all those 20% of people that knew how to read, probably one person knew how to read Ukrainian. I know I'm joking, but that's how little. Ukrainian national identity, national consciousness did not arise until like the 20th century and did not spread until the Bolsheviks. I'm telling you, that's how nationalism works. I could use France.
Okay. Sorry. Tell me some French history, and then when you're done, can you tell me about the Western Sahara and what about
I could use German history. I could use German history.
Civil War, please tell me please ramble on endlessly, as nobody learns nothing and nothing is gained.
I could explain to you, like, in France, Parisian French
the sound of your own
was only spoken by like 10% of people at the time of like the French Revolution. And over time, because of the dominance of Paris as the capital of France, and through the standardization of language through compulsory public schooling, people were able to, at some time, forced to learn standard French instead of whatever local dialect they spoke. They actually tried to do this in Ukraine under the Soviets through Ukrainization. You were taught Ukrainian in school. People didn't like speaking it because there was like a classist attitude to it. And your friend that you interviewed even talked about how under the during the Soviet Union, people thought if you spoke Ukrainian, you were like a peasant. You're not from the city and stuff like that, not metropolitan, let's say. And that's fucked up to have that kind of discrimination, but it wasn't banned or anything. People spoke Ukrainian under the Soviet Union, and because of the Soviet Union, the Ukrainian language spread.
You're rambling.
I'm really not. I'm
rambling. You're rambling. You're not giving me anything.
Honestly,
are you intoxicated?
Yes, but that's not the point.
Okay, you're very obviously intoxicated, and that you are rambling. I'm telling you.
What I'm trying to explain to you,
you're rambling. I don't need to talk to you about this. None of this is important to the central question, which we already got away from again, and I knew this would happen. What evidence is there?
I gave you evidence. You just keep dismissing
your evidence was that the president of Georgia was the governor of the Oblast. Give me evidence of the CIA. Give me evidence of the CIA, please.
I told you Ned spent money.
Because the National Endowment for Democracy, because they spent money on anti-corruption efforts in the country, which were successful, by the way, and a good thing. And a good thing. And a good thing.
Ukraine is the most corrupt country in Europe.
It's right behind Russia. Look. The thing is, the country has gotten less corrupt.
It's so funny how you guys get on Russia, because
it's just, you can't,
for all the shit that Russia gets, it still did a better job.
Quiet. Chat, look. I don't want to bully him because I think most of this is like lack of social awareness, and but whoa.
You learned about this country like a year ago, like $20 on that.
So the National Endowment for Democracy spent money on NGOs, anti-corruption NGOs, and then that money was then used to overthrow the government.
It was used to create those original protests, the Euro Maidan. Yes,
it didn't create the original protest.
Yes,
the original protest was spontaneous.
Okay,
It was on the street because Yanukovych pulled out of the associated agreement after he promised on the campaign trail he wouldn't. The police then brutalized student protesters, leading to more protesters showing up because most people don't like to watch students get beaten up on the street, which led to the police trying to crack down, hiring Tatushki, hiring thugs who ended up getting very violent with protesters. Some of them ended up dying. This spiraled out of control. Yanukovych tried to outlaw protesting. It failed. Negotiations fell through. Then Yanukovych fled the country.
Again, people like I cited earlier, Ivan Kachenovsky, he explains that yes, the police were violent, but they were nowhere as violent as the right-wing provocateurs and
provocateurs.
Provocateurs.
There's also a lot of evidence that the government paid Tutushki to engage violently towards the police and then justify crackdowns. This is stuff that, by the way, and I know if I accused American police of doing this, you'd be like 100% they've done this.
Wait, what are you talking about? Say that again.
That they paid Tutushki.
Who's Tutushki? I don't know who Tutushki is.
They're paid thugs that the government pays in order to engage violently with protesters. Usually
hooligans. Yeah, oligarchs use that all the time. The guy who became interim defense minister or the interior minister. Interior minister.
We don't need to get into all the history of it.
Football hooligans.
Okay,
he used
fantastic.
Football hooligans
for
the Maidan side. Yeah, that's like a common tactic in Ukraine. It's a very corrupt country.
Okay,
I'm happy. I'm happy you skip over it as.
I'm happy that you understand the word I just used. Can I finish my sentence since you're drunk and rambling? Okay. So they paid them to engage violently with protesters, and it sometimes even engage violently with police, which then justified a wider police crackdown, which involved putting nails and screws over flash grenades and throwing it into the crowds and beating them to death. Some got shot, others got stabbed.
Okay, I understand these are violent.
I know when you think about like mass graves.
I don't understand how
when it comes to murder.
I don't understand how this is a reason to overthrow
we talk about an
government.
IMF loan, and oh my God, that's vassal state. We need to get really offended about that. But murder and mass graves, oh my goodness, like
the mass graves you're talking about started with those IMF loans and started with those protests you're talking about now. Like America crossed Russia's red line.
Hey, look.
That's what.
Hey, you don't want to get massacred by Russia. You don't want your woman to be raped and murdered and your children shot and thrown into a mass grave. Just don't take out any IMF loans. If you, a woman's really asking for it when she takes out an IMF loan, wouldn't you say?
You're saying that, and people are going to clip you and point out all the times African countries took out IMF loans and hired death squads or some shit like that. So
I'm not worshiping taking out IMF loans, but it's a ridiculous thing to use.
It's not a ridiculous.
IMF loan.
It's actually a very good. It's actually a very good litmus test to see how much of a puppet country is to the United States,
there
or how much
justification. Because Ukraine took out an IMF loan does not justify their invasion, does not justify their war crimes, does not justify their behavior.
No, what in Russia's point of view justified the invasion was America crossing Russia's red line. It's simple as that.
Cross any red line.
Yes,
No, we didn't. We never did. That's the thing that's crazy about the start of this war is if you look at the start of this war, it's actually very chaotic because there's no.
No, it's not.
Can you do you ever do you go to parties much? Do you have many friends? Do you communicate with them? And is there a time where you talk?
I know you insult. I know you like to insult.
Then you stop.
I know for
talking.
a fact,
then you
Dylan,
stop
that
talking.
You don't know shit what you're talking about.
Then they talk
so
back
you
to
can insult.
It's called a conversation. It's called a conversation. So you say a thing, then I say a thing. Okay? These aren't supposed to overlap. And so if I'm talking, you're not supposed to be talking.
Okay, go ahead.
The start of this war was kind of chaotic when you look at the history of the war from, you know, February 24th before that, because there's not a lot Ukraine did between Zelensky getting powered and then that would have like really set off the February 24th invasion as any special day, because Russia was in a position to kind of sit pretty, almost guaranteed Ukraine wasn't going to join NATO, because you can't join NATO as long as you have a territorial dispute with another country. And as we know, Russia's occupying Crimea, and at the time they were occupying 1/3 of Donetsk and 1/3 of Luhansk. And so there was no way for Ukraine to join NATO. And so for Russia to launch this war to stop NATO, supposed NATO expansion, which we know wasn't going to happen as long as that territorial dispute existed, didn't really make sense for stopping NATO expansion, or because there wasn't like a big move NATO made to add Ukraine to NATO that really set Russia off. It was almost if like Vladimir Putin himself said, you know what, I'm done waiting for this conflict to come to a natural resolution or for an opportunity to present itself, so I'm going to create one, and then he invaded.
Okay. There's several things you left out, but I generally agree that history will tell us why he actually invaded it when he did invade. But yeah, he could have been like, yeah, I want to end this frozen conflict that's happening right on my border, and this will be the date I'll do it or whatever.
So we didn't.
But wait, can I finish? Because yes, you did. Second of all, your boy Vash interviewed a NATO officer who said that he personally trained Ukrainian regular troops in Ukraine before this conflict started. So maybe not officially Ukraine was a NATO, but Ukraine was receiving NATO training. Ukraine was being integrated into the NATO army. So sure, not officially, but your own boy interviewed a NATO officer admitting that Ukrainian troops were getting NATO training. What does that look like to Russia then?
Okay, first, it wasn't a NATO officer. It was a U.S. Army officer, right?
And he worked for NATO, but let's just say NATO is America.
He was Okay, sure. These terms mean nothing. So, as far as I'm aware, there was no speed up Ukraine was making when this war was launched that could have led to it meeting NATO standards to join NATO, especially when it comes to the territorial dispute.
Okay, but that doesn't mean
you can look at it this way. There is something I will give you, and that is Ukraine was getting stronger every year. Its military is getting more powerful.
Yeah, through the NATO training.
Not really the NATO training. This is a misconception. The NATO training and Western aid was really not that large leading up into this war. Definitely in comparison to what they're getting now. And most of the reforms that were made to the military were made internally. Most of the things that we needed to be changed were internal changes that NATO...
What was those internal changes, do you know, by any chance?
Structure of command, giving local officers more discrepancy when having military interactions.
So to go in line with NATO standards.
Well, it's not just NATO standards. Those
sound like NATO standards.
Well, it's also because it's NATO standards because it's the best standards. But the reason why those
so NATO standards, it's fine.
But it's not just NATO standards. The thing is,
but why they chose those standards specifically?
Because they've been shown to work. They've been shown to work because they're specifically designed to fight a Russian army. They're designed to fight the type of army that Russia is in a grand conflict. And so, if you're Ukraine and you're thinking, we might have a war with Russia on the horizon. But why would Ukraine have a war? You're going to choose the tactics that are the best because Russia invaded them. That's why they invaded them in 2014. Annexed Crimea, took 1/3 of Luhansk, 1/3 of Donetsk, and there was a fear that Russia was going to come back. It was one third of Donetsk and 1/3 of Luhansk before this.
No, they didn't take Luhansk or Donetsk. Those were separatist regions within Ukraine.
Okay, they took
in fact.
Russia. Man, who's Igor Girkin? Okay, you're gonna talk about these crazy.
I know. You're gonna talk about
crazy theories. You're gonna talk about these crazy theories about the president of fucking Jordan going over and working as the Odessa governor.
Go ahead, tell us about Igor Girkin.
We can have Igor Girkin, a former FSB agent, being the Minister of Defense for the Donetsk Oblast, and being tied up in war crimes, including shooting down a civilian air jet. This fucking crazed psychopath who admitted, by the way, that the Russians actually held people at gunpoint during the annexation of Crimea when it came to Crimean politicians. They were heavily involved in what was going on in Donetsk and Luhansk, not only in weapon shipments and aid, but also with agents and also with soldiers.
Nice little narrative there you built. So
it's not a narrative, it's what happened.
So what Igor Girkin did is he came into the Donbas region to fight on the separatist side, thinking that he could get support of Putin and the government. And instead, he got fucked over. And ever since then, he's been a doomer and against Putin. When the special military operation, the war, whatever you want to call it, started, he was one of the first guys saying that this was going to be a failure. You can look it up.
Are there Russian guns were the Russian guns sent to the Donetsk?
Based on what I read, basing my citation from Crossfire, Ukrainian Crossfire, majority of weapons were locally sourced. Yes, Russian weapons did go to the Donbas region, but not as much as people like you like to state. I'm sorry, but if Russian weapons really go to Donbas, you wouldn't have been seeing DPR and LPR soldiers using World War I weapons.
They're using World War I weapons right now. They're still using.
No, I think they've. I haven't seen videos of that in a while. It's not since the official annexation and stuff.
They're
integration.
Using very poorly maintained and poorly kept weapons, including weapons from the Second World War, and I still see some of the rifles from.
I'm just saying
it's not. I'm not saying
the reason you're seeing the reason you're seeing those World War I weapons is because they're locally sourced from whatever is left over in the Donbas from the previous.
They're fighting with them right now, and they're still using those weapons.
No, so they transitioned from using them over time. I know we've seen them as like. I think the last time I've personally seen a picture of it was late summer, after the annexation, especially, and official integration into Russia and the Russian army. I think they've been swapping them out.
Either way, it makes sense for Ukraine to train in order to have its military ready.
But they were trained by NATO.
Oh my!
I have an interview from a guy who's pro-NATO, who interviewed a NATO guy saying that he trained Ukrainian troops.
I'm gonna blow my brains out. You're actually.
I don't know what else. I don't know what else to say.
I never said that NATO didn't. I never said that NATO.
But this is Russia's red line.
Support. All I'm saying. We crossed that red line. Then we crossed that red line 8 years ago. Then I don't. So why didn't they invade 8 years ago and take over the whole country?
Actually, that is a really big
Why didn't they do it in 2016, 17, 18, 19, 21? They didn't do it. And so you're telling me that there was a 8-year delayed reaction for crossing a red line? Ridiculous. Not to mention, what a ridiculous red line to set. You invade a European country of its own, because it's going a separate way than you, and you are now going to tell everybody, how dare you send weapons to the country we're invading? It's ridiculous.
No, it's about setting up a military base right next to you.
How they kind of deserve it. Honestly, they've justified the military bases being put on the border. If you're acting like a crazed maniac invading your neighbors, I think that if anything is a justification.
Oh, you're like 20 years old. All your life, this country has been bombing at least 3 different countries.
Let me ask you a question. If America, okay, would you say? Do you think there's a good? Let me ask. Wait.
This is hilarious coming from you, Burns.
Shut the fuck up. Do you think there'd be any justifications for Cuba maybe putting some, like, I don't know, like some military bases like in its area, like, or they're asking for the Soviet Union to have military bases because they're fearful of a second Bay of Pigs. They're fearful of an invasion. Do you think Venezuela?
I never said I have ideological. I never said I have ideological, whatever. Like, I'm against doing that. I'm just saying this is what Russia views it. This is how it is. I'm saying this is how
there's a reason why Finland and Sweden joined NATO after they invaded Ukraine. They're scaring their neighbors.
They haven't joined NATO officially. Turkey hasn't let them in.
They're going to.
Yeah, as soon as they sell out all those Kurdish guys, they'll join NATO.
They're going to join NATO.
Okay, if Turkey lets them in.
They're going. Okay, you want to put money on it? I'd love to put some.
I'm not going to predict it. I'm just saying there's a lot of politics right now, and I think once this war is over and everybody cools down, you might see something else. But who knows?
So it wasn't a CIA coup.
It was a CIA coup.
You never provided any evidence.
You have to prove to me.
All you said was any defunding went to some NGOs. That doesn't prove the CIA overthrew the government. These are two totally different things.
Where do you think? Okay, so the organization. So NED helped organize students.
I'm actually done talking.
So NED was funding student organizations that went out and protested during Maidan.
Awesome, that's fantastic.
There is a history of America supporting the
so the accusation
who participated in the Holocaust, the Ukrainians who participated in the Holocaust.
Are you done?
There is a history of America helping these people escape Western Ukraine and settle in America and Canada. That's why there's a monument in Canada to SS Galicia. That's why in New Jersey, you could go to a Ukrainian cemetery and find the guy who translated Mein Kampf to Ukraine.
What? Really? Oh my God, in New Jersey? Well, that proves the CIA did it. I never considered that before.
Oh my God.
Thank you. Fucking actual brain rot. Actual brain rot. I didn't consider the New Jersey cemetery before analyzing if it was a coup. Oh God, I never considered that before. I told you, every time they come in here, they're gonna say they have evidence, then you bring them in, and then it was, well, I don't have evidence that the CIA did it. Well, I have evidence that there was like this Georgian politician who, became the governor of Odessa, or, there's the NED, which isn't the CIA, but, is an organization associated with the CIA, gave money to a students group. One of the student groups were participating in protests, which means that they overthrew the government. It's like, it's never anything. There's never anything, man.